Welcome, friends, to this day 3 of this year-end retreat, for those of you who are tuning in over Zoom. And today I want to carry on in our discussion of the 5 aggregates of clinging that we started to talk about yesterday. As the 5 aggregates of clinging, these are basically all the aspects of our body, mind, and you know, how our mind basically creates its perception of the world, and all of the tied in with all of the senses, and how it creates the karma that then comes back to, you know, give its effects to us. So yesterday we talked about the material aggregate being all the 5 physical sense organs, all the objects of the senses, anything you can see, hear, taste, smell, touch, or feel, and including one's own physical body and any other body. But basically, for our meditation purposes, it means the physical sensations coming through our senses, where we can feel our body, and then we can hear sounds, see visible objects, odors, flavors. These are all vibrations, what are called material vibrations, that come through our senses. And then we kind of feel them. All these vibrations produce either a painful feeling, a pleasant feeling, or a neutral feeling. Actually, most of them are neutral feelings because they come and go in the background and we hardly notice them. It's sort of like white noise that you get used to. But it's the painful and the pleasant feelings that these vibrations produce that that we react to the most. So we react with aversion to unpleasant sensations. I mean, we don't like them. We try to get away from them. And we react with desire for the pleasurable feelings and want to, you know, hold on to them or to create them. So, and then whatever you feel, I mean, what you actually experience through the senses is just a vibration. If your mind calls it my body, that's actually a perception within your mind. You don't see your body, you see visible vibrations, or you don't hear a cat meowing, you hear a sound, and the mind creates this idea of a cat meowing, or anything else. And the same for flavors and odors. So this is important for understanding meditation and for understanding the mind and how the world is created. So it's a very important aspect. A lot of people don't give much importance to that. You know, they just think they're seeing all these objects. But anyway, more about that later. So, so the perceptions are the visible counterpart to the material vibrations, which is essentially the material vibrations have no meaning until the mind kind of interprets them, and from memory creates this image or idea of whatever this body vibration is, or whatever this sound vibration is, or whatever this visible vibration is. So those are perceptions. It's like a mental image. Now, just for a moment, you know, close your eyes, and, you know, if you hear any sound, or like even the sound of this voice right now, your mind is probably thinking, oh, that's Bhante talking. I mean, if you know me, or that's somebody talking. Okay, but what is coming through your ear is just sound. The mind takes that sound and then creates this from memory, the idea of somebody talking. So that occurs every moment of our sensory experiences. So that's called perception. And then once we perceive, once the memory has recreated this object in our mind, it then brings in the past and future to that. So the fourth aggregate that we're going to talk about now is what is called the mental formations or the mental activities, or I tend to prefer the word to just call them the reactions. So it's how the mind reacts to these feelings and perceptions. So you have an object. And then yesterday I gave the example of when I was young that I hated avocados. So I don't know where that had come from, but anyway, I didn't like avocados. But my mother forced me to eat them. Not forced, but we served them for quite frequently. So when we had to eat avocado, I had a lot of aversion to that because I was seeing this image, and I wasn't just seeing a visible vibration. I was seeing some fruit that I believed I didn't like, or that I had negative reactions to, but this was recreated from the past. And that can be applied to everything else we experience. So anyway, so I reacted to that avocado with aversion, and even the physical reaction. Sometimes I would, if I had to put the avocado in my mouth. So these are the reactions to these perceptions and the memory. And so we react, everything that we've ever experienced in life, we react to them in one way or another. That means with liking, disliking, and then greed or hatred. And then we do karma based on those. We might use some language we speak to do something, or use our body to do something, or use our mind to do something. So these are the three ways that we react to our feelings and perceptions, but it's conditioned reaction. We don't really think about it. It's just a habit that's recreated, like a broken record going on and on over in your mind. And so that's why it's no self. There's no self doing that. It's just a habit doing that. Just like your computer, once it gets some information, it'll keep replaying this same stuff over and over again. You have to delete it, right? But most people don't know how to delete their reactions. But the Buddha has taught us how we can delete our negative reactions, because we're talking about the law of karma now. So anyway, this fourth aggregate is really where we are creating karma, is the results of previous karma, and it's where we create the fresh new karma. So our whole life we've been reacting to these sensory vibrations. And as the first day I gave a little talk about karma. That was part of my first talk about how our actions of body, speech, and mind have a reaction. Like I mentioned Newton's law for one simple example, or the law of gravity. So whenever we react to one of these stored up habits, then it strengthens the habit. If we react in the same way, it strengthens the habit. And then when a similar object comes again, we will react again just spontaneously or habitually the same way. So we get locked into these habits. And actually it's the brain and the nervous system. These are neural pathways. So karma really are neural pathways that have been created in the brain through our actions, our volitional activities. So what we do with our body, speech, and even our thoughts. And therefore, we just keep repeating the same habits, even though we don't want to. Largely, people keep repeating the habits because these are ingrained neural pathways deep in the nervous system, and you can't get to them just by wishing. You have to be able to have some technique where you can actually subvert or short circuit the neural pathways in order to prevent that energy from completing its circuit and redirect that energy into a new neural pathway. And actually, much of the Buddha's teaching, almost all of the Buddha's teaching, is about that process. It's about short-circuiting the negative neural pathways and creating new wholesome neural pathways that then become wholesome habits. So we try to transform our negative habits based on greed, hatred, and delusion into the opposites, habits of non-greed or generosity and kindness, and non-hatred, or means friendliness and kindness and compassion towards others, and wisdom. That means wisdom into the deeper nature of truth of what the mind is. So, but in order to do that, we need the tools of meditation, and that's where this practice that we're doing, following the 4 foundations of mindfulness, is focused at developing concentration, mindfulness, and understanding, right understanding, so that when things come to us into our mind, we can see that intention to want to react. Normally, we don't see the intention because our mind is distracted or it's kind of half asleep. And intentions are arising from a very deep level of the unconscious. And normally, we're not attentive at that level. That's why we don't see the intentions arising. We've already said something, and then I shouldn't have said that. How many times have we done that, right? Or did something that, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I shouldn't have, because you didn't see the initial intention, or you couldn't resist it. And so even though you might have saw the intention, you went ahead and did it anyway, because of these neural pathways. They're not easy to access. So that's why the practice of mindfulness, and especially the practice of vipassana meditation, is the Buddha's, what I like to call the high technology, high mental technology of learning how to actually do brain surgery. You could call it that. You could call the Buddha, a brain surgeon. So we're doing surgery on our brain. That means we're going into our brain and being aware of these electromagnetic impulses and the synapses. Synapses are the places where the energy is going from one place to another, like current jumping over the filament. And that's what connects these energies, connects the afferent, the incoming stimulus from the outside world, and then the outgoing stimulus from our mind that goes back into the external world. Like we hear a sound, and then we react and we say some speech back out. So that's called afferent and efferent. This is, of course, a medical terminology, but it applies equally well in this kind of situation. So it's when you develop concentration, and we were doing this already the last couple of days in our meditation, where we get centered in the body, because the body and the nervous system, we get centered in there, and we learn how to observe these subtle sensations that I was talking about and these impulses. So when our mind is concentrated and we can feel these subtle impulses and we can feel let's say an itch coming on, we can very clearly see that itch before we've reacted to it. And we can be, an itch is arising, okay. And we're just aware of itching and we can relax around it. And that relaxing around that stimulation is like short-circuiting the synapse, is short-circuiting that energy going into the neural pathways. It kind of dulls it or delays it anyway. Let's say it delays it. And so you resist the urge to scratch. Normally we would just immediately, do this. But instead, when you feel that itching, that awareness, you resist that urge to scratch. And by just looking at the itch, look at this itch. Okay, it's, look at these little sensation of itching. And it's building up. Okay, it's not that bad. You kind of talk yourself through it. And that delays the reaction. But you can see the urge to want to lift your arm and scratch. But you have a choice. You can lift it and scratch if you want, but that will increase the habit. Or you can say, no, I'm not going to scratch, and just relax around it. And you see how that itch disappears within 5 or 10 seconds, and you don't have to waste your energy. So therefore, you weaken that neural pathway. Every time you can delay your reaction to move the body in some way, or, if it's a negative reaction, of course, or to speak, if somebody is speaking some harsh language to you and you can see yourself getting upset about it and you want to blurt out some, rebuttal to that person or some profanity, you can restrain yourself and say, no, I'm not going to react to that. So you delay that karmic action, and then you can, instead of replying with negative language, you can reply with some kind, gentle language. Well, okay, you said this to me, but okay, I'm not going to take it personally. It's okay, it's okay. And so you can save yourself from reacting out of anger. So that weakens that particular habit of, reacting in anger, or even with any emotion. That same technology can be applied to any stimulation. But especially in the Buddhist practice, the ethics, or following the 5 precepts, are one of the major ways of helping to do this. So the 5 precepts about, you take the training rule to abstain from harming or killing things, to refrain from stealing, to refrain from sexual misconduct, means hurting others through lustful attachments and so on, or refrain from the harsh speech and lying, and the intoxicating the mind. So these 5 precepts are called the 5 negative actions. There are more, but these are the main ones. Okay, so that people do, there's strong habits. You see people using bad language all the time, and of course intoxicating their minds with alcohol and drugs and sleeping around, and all these things. People break every single 5 precept. A lot of people, not everybody, but and some of us might break 1 or 2 once in a while. So anyway, so the basically that sankhara khanda is that aggregate of mental formations is one of the most important ones, because that's where you make it or break it. That's where you win it or lose it. We're losing the battle of the sankharas, or you're winning the battle of the sankharas. And the sankharas simply mean these habitual habits that we've created. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, but we want to kind of keep it simple and keep it directly focused on, this practice. So that's why when you're paying attention in the process of meditation, by first getting grounded in the body and feeling the material vibrations, that helps you to observe the pleasant and painful feelings that arise. And by resisting those feelings, you see the perceptions arise also. And by understanding, oh, this is just a perception, it's just a mental image, and not to cling to it too tightly. But then you see the urge to want to react. And as I just explained, you relax around it and you just mentally make a note, urging. You kind of notice that urging, or wanting, kind of, because it's an impulse. You see that it's it's a contraction of the nervous system, some urge to want to move or urge to do something. So you remind yourself of, or you just make a note, and that's what helps to restrain yourself. It creates some distance. When you're just watching something, like you're just watching the body sitting, breathing, it creates this watching space. So when something happens to the body, like an itch, there's still that space there that gives you a split second to say, okay, I'm not going to itch. And that's the critical, that's the critical time when we have to apply our wisdom and understanding in order to decrease these negative habits that cause us suffering, and then to apply the right effort to replace those negative ones with the wholesome, with kind of the opposite of that. So the opposite of intoxicating your mind would be meditation. That means clearing your mind. The opposite of telling lies would be to tell the truth. The opposite of being addicted to sensual pleasures is to be more contented, to be more grounded in the present moment, feeding off the natural happiness of present moment awareness. So this is really the crux of the practice of the Eightfold Path and of the meditation. So therefore, this aggregate of the sankharas, it's really where the karma is created and where suffering increases, or where you can decrease suffering by the right effort. That's where you apply the right effort. You can't do much about the material vibration, the first three aggregates: material vibration, the feeling, and the perception. Those are gonna come up automatically. But it's there at the intention, where you have a couple of a brief moment to reflect. Do I really need to do this particular action? Is it just going to waste my time and energy? And you can let go of it. If you see that it's not going to be useful, you let go of it. Or you deliberately create the wholesome aspect of it. Like if you're thinking, a very common example in our meditation practice is about especially ill will. Let's say you're thinking negative thoughts towards somebody. Oh, that person cheated me, or they, did something else. And so you're getting angry, you have ill will. But instead you consider, this person, they're also trapped in their own mind, and it's not really them doing it, it's just a habit. Let me wish this person to be free from their suffering. So instead of creating some negative thoughts back toward the person, say, may you be well and happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free from greed, hatred, and delusion. May you be able to hear the Dhamma. May you be able to practice, may you be able to practice meditation to free the mind from suffering. So that's just an example of replacing the negative thoughts with the wholesome thoughts, so that you don't keep strengthening these habits of greed, hatred, and delusion, but weakening their energies and then replacing them with the wholesome aspects. And the wholesome aspects, even ignorance, to replace one's false views with the wisdom and understanding. Of course, that comes through the meditation. Okay, so now we've talked about that fourth aggregate. I mean, there could be a lot of more to say about it, but basically that's the important aspect of it, is these intentions, because it's the intention, the conscious intention. You have an idea, I'm going to tell a lie, and you do it. So that's a karma. You can't take it back. Once you've told the lie, you can't take back. That's already gone out into the universe or to the atmosphere and is entering the minds and bodies of people, and you can't take it back. The only thing you can do is prevent it from doing in the first place. Now, if you stop doing those negative actions long enough, then those habits over time will die on the vine, or they'll kind of get weaker and weaker and weaker as long as you're replacing them with wholesome habits. So it's that's how that process works. So you develop mindfulness. It's aware of these various impulses and urges that arise, because you're grounded in the body. If you're not grounded and centered in the body, you're not going to see them. So for the most part. So and therefore, I mean, after you've trained yourself to a very high degree, then you will be able to do it without necessarily being in a deep state of meditation. But so now we come to the fifth aggregate, okay? Now the fifth aggregate is consciousness. Now consciousness, I would think I've already mentioned about it. It's the knowing faculty. And it's really almost identical with perception, because, whenever we feel something and then we perceive it, that consciousness comes together with the perception, but the perception is not consciousness, but they arise together. Consciousness is just the light of a movie projector, as I mentioned. The perception would be the frames of the movie reel passing through the light, so that you see them up on the screen. In this case, we see them projected outside of ourselves. But actually, the perception is arising within the brain, and that light of consciousness is also there. And it's projected out our eyeballs that we see something that appears to be out there separate from us, just like in a movie theater. Go to the old movie theaters where they used to have a projector and the light coming from the back wall. It's very interesting, And so you're sitting there under the light. You don't see the light, but you're seeing the movie on the screen. But if the movie projector gets broken or the light goes out, it vanishes. So it's a very good analogy, actually. And I usually mention that really, our brain is just a gigantic movie projector. And that's what we're seeing when we look around. We're seeing a mental movie. Now, people may not like to hear that. Just like, physicists may not like to hear some of the things physicists say or do, or biologists, but, facts are facts. But anyway, so I don't want to belabor the point. But as I mentioned, so the consciousness comes up at each moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, and touching. Anytime any of these six senses are impinged, and they're being impinged almost all the time when we're awake, these moments of consciousness arise. So there's something called a mind moment. And consciousness has the analogy of this movie roll of film again. So each frame of a movie roll of film is like one conscious moment, a moment of hearing, It arises with the perception. We see it, but then it vanishes very quickly. But it will arise again very quickly, and it will do that millions of times in the blink of an eye, very fast, quicker than a computer is processing information. This mental process of the 5 aggregates is arising and vanishing like that. But we don't see the spaces in between, just like you don't see the space between 2 frames of a movie roll, right? Until they put it on slow motion, and then you see that kind of staccato-like image. So we don't see the spaces between the mind because it's operating so fast, and our mind basically is very dull. And it's very slow because we're clinging to things, because our mind is holding on to things. We're not able to see how quickly these mind moments are arising and vanishing. So all these 5 aggregates arise and vanish like that together. We talk about them one after another, but really in all intents and purposes, they are arising more or less simultaneously in each moment. It's called a mind moment. And the sense of self arises with that moment too, in an ignorant person. We talked about how the ego or the sense of I is created shortly after birth, at the baby, as they start to learn language and its senses started to mature, and it starts to see things and react to things. So, and then they get a name, and then they start to develop these likes and dislikes. So that sense of I is gradually developed, and basically it remains in the consciousness until one dies, unless one attains enlightenment, or until you're able to develop a high degree of meditation, where this sense of self can actually kind of disappear from the mind. So anyway, the sense of I arises, it's not something static in your mind. The sense of I arises with each of these mind moments, each of these moments of consciousness that arises, and then it vanishes too. Now, if you could stay in that space between after something vanished and before something else arose, if you could stay in that space, that would be emptiness, basically. And that would be an experience of no self too. But normally we can't do that unless you've developed a very high degree of concentration and insight knowledges and so on. So basically, for everybody, that sense of self, this 5 aggregate process is arising with this sense of I. So we think that we are the one that's hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, but in reality, it's kind of like an illusion. You know, because again, the baby's not born with it. It's something that was created. So if it can be created, it can also be decreated. It can be overcome. So that's what we're eventually, the goal, of course, of the meditation practice is to weaken this sense of self so it doesn't cause you so much suffering. Because almost all forms of suffering are due to the clinging to I, me, and mine, and identifying with everything. And when everything happens or changes, oh me, oh my, you know, that's what creates the suffering. Because we're identifying with this consciousness as being myself or my soul. And it's this consciousness that a lot of people might take to be their soul. They think that their consciousness is going to go to, let's say, a heaven after death, or maybe in some other place, hell or something, and stay there for eternity, as some religions might talk about. But this sense of self is not something eternal that's going to be like that necessarily. But as long as you're clinging to it, yes, you're going to experience it like that. But anyway, so the consciousness aggregate is the really the one that we really have the strongest clinging to, and where we get our self-identification, that sense of I am the doer. I am the one that's hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, thinking, deciding, and then acting. And we believe that very strongly. And if somebody insults our sense of ourself, we get angry. And every type of volition and negativity and crime is based on the self, not controlling this sense of self, because we take it to be real. We don't understand what it is. So that's what the Buddha was trying to get us to understand. How the sense of self is created and how it can become our Frankenstein's monster. They talk about Frankenstein's monster, right? Well, our ego can be our own Frankenstein's monster if we let it get out of control. And it starts beating us. Guilt, worry, remorse, and fear, sending you into deep depression, committing suicide even. Because we don't know how to, we don't understand the process. So that's why this meditation practice is very important. For overcoming suffering and the self-created problems. So anyway, so kind of just briefly, these 5 aggregates, and it's our whole experience. You can't get away from these 5 aggregates. They're always there. And as long as you can identify them and say, well, okay, this is material vibration, this is feeling, this is perception, this is intention, this is, the urge to do something, this is the ego consciousness, but you understand it. Okay, temporarily these things are there, but let me not be a slave to them. Let me not, do things that I don't want to do. And so you learn how to fix it. You learn how to fix your mind. It's like, if you learned a car engine, right? In your car, your engine, okay? And maybe you studied car mechanics, auto mechanics in school, and you learn how to fix an engine. So if you're driving along the road and something gets broken, you can stop and make a few tests and say, okay, I need to replace the fuel pump, or I need to replace the spark plug. And you can fix it. But if you never took auto mechanics, and you don't know anything about fixing an engine, if you're out on the road and a car breaks down, you're at the mercy of having to stop some other motorist who then might, do something to you, or you have to call AAA, or in Europe, they have these green cars in Germany that go around on the highways helping people. But anyway, so in the practice of the Dhamma, we learn how to understand ourselves. We don't have to go to a psychologist, although some people do, but you become your own psychologist and you become your own psychotherapist by understanding how the mind works and then using the tools, the natural tools that we've been given by nature or whoever else you think might have given them to you, but just nature, the evolution. So these tools of mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, and these tools of the Noble Eightfold Path. But how many people talk very much about that? Not only within the Buddhist teaching and maybe within yoga and some of these Eastern disciplines, they talk about that you can change yourself by yourself. You don't have to wait for a savior to do it for you. And that's the wonderful message. And no one is punishing you or rewarding you. Your own mind does that to you. Karma is sort of the thing that either, we don't call it reward or punishment, but it, certain actions, it's a natural law that these negative actions are going to bring painful consequences. The wholesome actions are going to bring more pleasant consequences. So, anyway, those 5 aggregates then become the focus of vipassana meditation. So the word vipassana meditation actually is comprised of two words. A word pasana, which means seeing. It means really seeing. In meditation, you're seeing, but seeing things separately. Also seeing just normally. We see something and you see a person and you say, oh, that's Joe, or, that's Prashant. So you're seeing that person as a whole. But with the eye of vipassana, you see that's 5 aggregates. That's form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. Now, people might think, that's crazy, but that's seeing it with the eye of wisdom. So that's seeing reality as it is. How is this object created? Okay, we see an object, but how has it been created? Through this mental process. And what we're seeing is a projection of our mind. Even though that person may be there, we're not saying the person isn't there, but we're still seeing it the way our mind is creating it. And especially in terms of something you don't like, somebody you don't like, or somebody you do like. Because if some stranger comes into our view, we don't know him from anybody, we may not have any likes or dislikes about it. But only because of memory of somebody we know that we have disliked, or some certain types of persons we have fear about come to us, then we have these fearful or negative reactions. So it's not about whether the external world exists or not. It's about how our mind creates the idea of the world and how we then create our suffering or our non-suffering based on the way that we respond to this. Anyway, I just wanted to make one more. I was mentioning the analogy of the ego to the role of film. So the sense of I arises with each moment of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking. I've already mentioned this. So because we don't see these things arising and vanishing, that's why the sense of self seems to be real and continuous. But when we tune into the flow of impermanence, and actually we can start seeing how quickly things come and go, then this sense of self kind of diminishes, doesn't have such strong power. And then when we reach very deep levels of meditation, then the pauses between these moments, or the mind might cease its arising and passing away process, and we can then directly experience this complete dissolution of the sense of I, to understand how that it really doesn't exist absolutely. It only exists when we're clinging to the idea. So anyway, that's what Vipassana is about. And the next stage of meditation, yesterday in our meditation, or last 2 days, we've been talking about the first stage is to get centered in the body using the breathing. So the breathing body, that's the real home for the mind. And by keeping the mind concentrated in the body, we start to feel all the nervous system vibrations that are coming through the nervous system. And so that's a very subtle level of awareness. We brought our level of attention down to the unconscious level, you could say. And we can actually see our thoughts when they're just sort of starting to come up. We can see these feelings when they're in a very weak kind of stage yet, when we haven't reacted to them. And there we can contemplate them or let go of them and remain in the flow of the present moment. Anyway, so once one has reached this level of body-centered awareness, where the mind is no longer sleepy or drowsy and it's no longer flooded with all kind of thoughts, then you can start tuning into the flow of impermanence, what's called the flow of impermanence, or anicca sanya, the perception of impermanence. And that means you see how these different sensations, including your breathing, just arise, last a moment or two, and stop. So impermanence actually means beginning and stopping, or starting and stopping. So everything begins and ends, or it starts and it ends. Like a sound starts coming through the ear, like that sound, like it began and ended very quickly. And each of these syllables arose and vanished. But normally we're not seeing the spaces in between. Now I slowed it down on purpose. So you could see each syllable as a separate thing, right? But normally we don't. And so it's all run together. So in Vipassana meditation, we learn to try to slow down our movements, even our body movements when we practice walking meditation or other movement meditations. We deliberately make the movement short, like when I lift the arm, it's lifting, 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 lifting. So we can see each of those starting and stoppings of each of those separate little muscle body movements. That's part of Vipassana practice. We're doing that in our in-house retreat to a certain extent, but on Zoom it's not easy to be teaching that. But anyway, so we tune into we tune in to see how the in-breath starts. That means the expanding of your stomach or chest begins. You feel the sensations of the clothing rubbing against the skin. The in-breath begins, it lasts 1 or 2 seconds and stops. And then the out-breath begins, the contracting breath begins, lasts a second or two and stops. So you deliberately tune your mind in to noticing the beginning and the end, in the middle, the beginning, the middle, and the end of each of these sensory impingements. So that's why focusing on the breathing in the center of the body, on the expanding and contracting sensations in the abdomen, stomach, and chest is the best suitable object to do this, because it's more gross, as opposed to trying to feel the touch of air at the tip of the nostril. That's a very difficult thing to notice. It's very faint, so we don't really see that kind of coming and going so much. So all these little, where the clothes touches the skin, you can feel those different little sensations. You can feel 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them in one in-breath and one out-breath. So that's the beginning of this, developing this anicca sanya in the Vipassana meditation method. And then while you're doing that, if you're well concentrated, you might feel something on your, like a little itch on your head. And you even while feeling the breathing in the periphery, you can see how you can feel this itch, but you don't, you restrain the urge to itch. And you see how that little itch, there's a few sensations with it and it vanishes. And then there's something else. Maybe you feel something over on your arm, or over on your head, or on your foot, different sensations. And you start to just see how quickly these different sensations also are just arising and vanishing very quickly. But if you react to them and say, oh, that itch, then you don't see it arising and vanishing. You're actually making it more permanent. And then it starts to dig into your nervous system deeper, and eventually causes you to squirm around and, get disturbed. And the same is for any thought. If we don't catch our thoughts, you remember that somebody told a lie about you, and you start, that. Initially, when the thought arises, you say, thinking. And you try to separate from the thought. It's just a thought. But if you can't do that, then you take that thought as being you, and you then start thinking about the person that insulted you, and then plotting revenge and triggering off all kinds of other things. So we make that thought permanent. But if we're able to just say, notice quickly, thinking, it's just a thought bubble, and don't grasp at it, it will vanish very quickly also. And it will allow you to stay connected to your primary object of meditation. And so that is how we begin this. The process of the vipassana starts when you're able to start noticing these beginning and ending of the different sensations, even sounds. You hear a sound in your house, maybe a door slams, boom, it just arose and vanished very quickly. Or if somebody's talking, try to hear each individual syllable and not running them together and then understanding what they're saying and getting upset with what they're saying. One little syllable, you can't get upset with one little syllable. But only when you cling to them and run them together and say, oh, that person's talking, they're telling a lie about me. Then, right? So this is, again, this is high technology. Who could have thought about that except for Buddha? Even Einstein didn't think like this. So anyway, that's one of my pet peeves. How the Buddha was really a brain scientist. And how to do surgery on the brain. That's what we're doing. We're doing surgery on the brain. Okay, so I think I may bring this Dhamma talk to an end. And we still want to have a little session of some stretches, because doing yoga before meditation, it helps a lot. Because if you just sit down cold to meditate, kind of like, then your body's not going to have much feeling, and probably you're just going to go to sleep, or the mind will just wander in thoughts, or you get bored and say, what the heck am I doing here? This is no use, and get up and go away. But if you do some yoga stretches before sitting to meditate, then hopefully you can feel some sensation. Yeah. And, you stretch the joints a little bit, get the blood circulation moving, that when you sit down, it's like, wow, the body's a cool place to hang out. You don't want to go anywhere because it feels good. There's little tingling sensations and so on. So that's why it's very useful. And that's why I always do it, because otherwise people will overlook it and they'll just sit down and they're missing out on a lot, or they'll struggle more than they have to. That's the thing. Most people struggle in meditation more than they have to, because they haven't learned the supporting factors, the things that help support the meditation. It's not just the meditation itself. It's how you're sitting, the environment you're in, and a lot of other things. And of course, how you live your life too. And we'll talk more about that in the last couple of talks. Okay? So go ahead and take a few minutes break. And then we'll come back and we'll have the yoga exercise and then sitting for our meditation. Okay? See you back in a few minutes. Okay, friends. So we're going to do a little standing and then a few exercises before we sit. Just try to stand straight. Try to keep your feet parallel to each other, about 4 inches apart. Relax your arms and hands at the sides. Try to just mentally feel the standing body. Then begin some deep, slow breathing. Try to draw the air from the abdominal lobes, the lower lobes, up through the middle to feel that expansion in the upper part of the chest. Hold the air in for a couple of seconds, 2 or 3 seconds, and slowly breathe out. Try to feel the last bit of air go out of the lungs on the out breath. Just cultivate this basic mindfulness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Just take a few more breaths like that on your own. Just feel the clothing expanding and touching the chest as it expands and contracts. Now we're going to combine with this breathing, these coordinate with the movements. So we do the movement with the in-breath, holding that position while holding the breath in the lungs, and then returning to the starting point on the out breath. And we repeat each one 3 times. And even with these movements, you can notice the beginning and end. Each of these movements has a beginning and lasts a few seconds and then stops. Then the returning to the starting point has a beginning, starts, lasts a few seconds and stops. So you can even try to be aware of that too. Make it meditation. It's actually can be done exactly as meditation. So anyway, on the next in breath, raise the arms over the head. Interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms. Stretch up. On the out breath, turn the hands down, touch the top of the head. Stop. Beginning in breath. Stop. Beginning out breath. Stop. Beginning in breath. Now hold that upward stretch longer. Still stop. Hold that stretch longer. Feel the sensations. Release the fingers in the out breath. Lowering back to the side. Stop. Just feel the sensations. Close the eyes. Just feel those subtle sensations in the hands and fingers, even where the clothing touches the skin. You can feel the pulse of blood. Each of those pulsations is a beginning and an end, is a arising and vanishing. Pulse. or any other sensations you can notice, just lasting for a moment or two, stopping. Okay, on the next in breath, push up on the toes while raising the arms over the head in this way, facing the palms toward each other about 6 inches apart, and stretch. The out breath begins, last few seconds. Stop. Next in breath starts. Stop. Out breath begins. In. In. Hold that upward stretch longer. Out. Just close the eyes, don't let the mind wander. Just keep it right there in the sensations, especially the hands and fingers. You might feel sensations on other parts of the body, your head, chest, arms, feet. And just remember standing, the present moment of the body, standing here and now, pulsating, full of sensation. If you recognize anything, like even saying your hands, actually that's a perception already. The idea of your body is a mental perception. Okay, next we'll do side bending. So on an in-breath, raise both arms up. Try to keep your fingers and arms straight, close to the head. On the out breath, bend over your right side as far as you comfortably can. Feel that stretch in the side. In-breath, lift up. It's a beginning and an in. And going to the other side has a beginning and an in, out breath. In breath, lift up, beginning. In, out breath, beginning. In breath, beginning. In, out breath, beginning. In breath, lift up. Now on the out breath, lower the arms down. Close the eyes. Just keep feeling the body. Don't let the mind wander. Normally when we finish doing something, the mind immediately wanders to think about something else. We don't have anything to focus on. The body is always our main focus. Present moment. But even so, you can probably notice thoughts going through your mind, just thinking. And just watch the thoughts without following them. And they'll just vanish. If you pick a thought to think about, then it fills up your whole mind. Instead, just fill your mind with standing, standing, standing. And next, we're going to do knee bending. On an in-breath, again, lift up on the toes and lift the arms up front for balance. On the out-breath, bend the knees and lower down as far as you can, ideally down into the squatting position. And on an in-breath, lift up. Feel the muscles in the legs pushing the body up. In out-breath. In. Out. In. The out-breath. Close the eyes. Just feel the heart beating. Feel the arising and vanishing of each heartbeat. Or if you can't feel the heartbeat, feel the pulse, your fingers. Now, do the head turning from right to left. On the in-breath, turn the head to the right. Look over the right shoulder. Out breath all the way back to the left. Look over the left shoulder. And each movement begins, lasts a few seconds, stop. In breath. Out breath. In. Out. When the in-breath, let the head stop in the center, relax. Feel all those different sensations. Feel those subtle life force sensations. So many of them vibrating. It's the material vibrations, the aggregate of material vibrations. Although some of them, if they feel pleasant or painful, that's the feelings aggregate. Or they're just neutral sensations. If the thought of life force enters your mind, that's a perception. The thought of your body, it's a perception. And if you think about it, that's the mental activity, the thought of yourself doing this, the ego consciousness. All five aggregates are already there every moment. Okay, so let's come back to our seats and start our sitting meditation. Just get comfortable with the seat. Just try to keep the back and the head in a straight line. Try to feel or establish that natural inward curve of the lower lumbar spine. It helps to support the weight of the upper body. Just gently close the eyes. Just rest your attention behind the eyes. From that point behind the eyes, try to feel that outline of the sitting body, feeling the head on top, the shoulders, arms, chest, the lower body pressing the floor. That general sense of sitting. And just remind yourself of sitting, 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 here and now of the body. Try to feel some of those sensations that were generated during the yoga session. It's the clothing touching the skin, some sensations on your face. Feel your lips touching together. Feel the tongue inside the mouth, where the tongue may touch your teeth. And then again, do some few three-part breaths to ground the attention in the breathing body. And try to take some slow, deep breaths and holding the air in the lungs 2 or 3 seconds to feel the subtle sensations of the oxygenating blood. Just focus on the expanding and contracting sensations, feeling the beginning and the ending of each in-breath and each out-breath. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Feel the last bit of air go out. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Again, we're going to count the breaths from 1 to 10. Develop a more closer concentration on the breathing, and try to notice the beginning and end of each in-breath, beginning and end of each out-breath. So with the next expanding in-breath, mentally count to 1. When the breath stops, count 1. With the out-breath, also count to 1. Next in-breath, 2. Out-breath, 2. In-breath, 3. Out-breath, 3. In-breath, 4. Out-breath, 4. In-breath, 5. Out-breath, 5. In-breath, 6. Out, 6. In, 7. Out, 7. In, 8. Out, 8. In, 9. out 9, in 10, out 10. Now just continue the counting. Keep your mind focused on the breathing, feeling the shorter, uncontrolled, irregular rhythm of expanding and contracting, following it with close awareness, just knowing when the breath is coming in and knowing when the breath is going out. You know it by feeling it. You can just have the feeling of being a scientist looking down through the microscope. Try to tune into those 4 phases of each breath cycle. The expanding in breath from beginning to end, the brief pause, the contracting out breath from beginning to end, the brief pause, over and over and over again. Seeing how each breath is impermanent. It begins, lasts a second or 2, stops. The out breath begins, lasts a second or 2, stops. Sharpen the mindfulness on that arising and vanishing. And even while the breath is coming in, you can notice some other sensations, 2 or 3 expanding sensations within one in breath. There's actually multiple expanding sensations. And with each contracting breath, also multiple contracting sensations. So let your thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Keeping the attention focused in the breathing process. Try to notice how each breath is different. Longer or shorter. Sometimes you feel it more in the abdomen, other times you feel it in the rib cage or chest. The beginning of the breath you feel in the abdomen, the middle of the breath you feel in the rib cage, the end of the breath you feel at the upper chest. Same with the out breath. Beginning of the out breath in the abdomen, middle of the out breath, middle chest, end of the out breath, the upper chest. Just try to notice that. The pauses of between the breaths may become longer or shorter. The nature of impermanence, everything is changing. In sitting, out, out, sitting, bringing the mind back to reground, connect the breathing body. The mind is relaxed enough, it's naturally can notice other sensations coming and going in and around through breathing body awareness. Some sensation on your face, your arm, maybe a sound, even the sounds of this voice, sound vibrations arising and vanishing through the ear. You might start noticing the arising of some unpleasant sensations, minor aches and pains, knees and back. These unpleasant sensations or the feelings aggregate. Vibrations themselves are the material aggregate. Feelings, the pleasant or painful feelings, the feeling. If you identify it as my knee or back, that's a perception. If you think about it or worry about it, that's mental activity. And the thought of yourself meditating is ego consciousness. All five of those aggregates are always there. You might even feel the subtle pulse of blood in the arteries. Those pulses that are rising and vanishing. The more physical vibrations you can notice, less time for your mind to get lost in thought. Just noticing how all these different sensations are just arising, lasting a moment or two, vanishing. Be alert when any urge arises, the urge to move, or any wanting coming to the mind. Just notice it as urging, wanting. Just let it go. Stay with the breathing or the flow of other sensations. Just keep turning up the power of the mental microscope. Notice subtler, finer details. sensation, breathing, body process, flow of impermanent. The in-breath comes and goes, body sensations come and go, out-breath comes and goes, sound comes and goes, thought comes and goes, and out-breath comes and goes, urge comes and goes, few sounds come and go. Moment by moment. All coming and going through this present moment, breathing body awareness. From time to time, come back and take a few deep, slow breaths to re-energize the nervous system, especially if you're feeling a little dull, too many thoughts. Breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. Breath by breath, moment by moment. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Material vibrations come and go. Pleasure and pain come and go. Perceptions and thoughts come and go. Ideas of I, me, and mine come and go. These are all just conditioned elements of the body and mind, the five aggregates, arising and passing away. Causing the mind to create karma. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to freedom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Dukkha pata chani dukkha Maya pata chani bhaya Sukha pata chani sukha Ontu sabbe pipani May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way, may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. And thus spoke the Buddha. And for those of you out there in the Zoom land who want to join in chanting the word sadhu 3 times to finish the meditation, you can join in that. Sadhu. So those of you who are listening in over Zoom, I hope you're able to have a insightful meditation. And so we're going to sign out now and try to, do an extra meditation later this. Well, it's already evening for maybe some, or this evening or tomorrow morning, at least one time before we come back tomorrow afternoon. So
Thank you, Bhante.
mindfulness today keeps dukkha away. See you tomorrow.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.